Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut a dress with a built-up collar. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So first, I'm going to start with my pattern paper, and here on my pattern paper, I marked about 2.5 inches before my starting line. So this totally depends on the height of your built-up collar, and I went ahead to mark my basic measurement, which is the bust, under bust, waist, and blouse length. I'll be marking my shoulder line not on the first line but on the second line. I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2 plus half. Then from here I'll go down by 1 inch. The reason why I added ½ inch for my shoulder is because this dress has a sleeve. So I'll just go ahead and connect, and the next step is to go ahead to find your chest line or your armhole, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Mine is 7. I'll mark back what I have on the shoulder so that I'll make sure I have a straight line and I will connect. So after I'm done doing that, I'll place my tape and remeasure again to make sure that I am accurate. So after doing that, I went ahead to draw out this line at this point. So this will be serving as my chest line. I'll go ahead to divide it into 2 and mark. So I'll be coming in by ½ inch, and I'll go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 at my chest line, and I'll go ahead to connect to the bust circumference and take this to the upper part of my shoulder. So I'm just going to rule out this line, and I'll leave the shoulder line because we will still be altering it later. So after doing this, the next step I want to take is to go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 3.5 divided by 2, meaning my nipple to nipple is 7 inches. So which is also your bust span. And after that, I'm going to place my ruler and I'll draw out a straight line. So after I'm done doing this, I will just go ahead and come up by 1.5 inches. So if you don't want to reveal your bust much or your cleavage, you can just go ahead and use 2 inches. Now I'll go ahead and mark back that my nipple to nipple divided by 2 on this point, and I'm going to draw a straight line. After I'm done connecting, I'm going to be marking 1 inch on both sides of my under bust. Now if you're a plus size, you're going to be making use of 1.5, or if you're a bit busty, you will also be making use of 1.5. So I'll go ahead and draw a straight line at that point, connecting the dots, and I'll be drawing out a dart at the lower part. You can go ahead to take your dart straight down if you want to, but you're going to still go ahead to replace it much later. So I'll just go ahead and I will connect, and from the bust I'm going to be connecting down to the under bust, and I will go ahead to repeat this at the other side of my pattern, and I'll use my marker to draw it out. So you want to consider the neckline when you're drawing out this pattern. So I'll be taking a dart intake of ½ inch on both sides. Normally you're just going to take 1 inch because I'm considering the neckline so that that part won't be too curvy. I'm just making use of ½ inch at both sides, meaning I have just 1 inch dart intake at the upper part. So after I'm done doing that, I'll go ahead to insert my body measurement, mark my bust circumference divided by 4, go ahead to measure this. I'll replace and add my sewing allowance. I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. At the waist, I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance. So after that, I'm just going to go ahead to connect from my chest line, or from the under bust to the upper part of my bust and chest line, connect to my waist line, and I'll take it down. So for my blouse length, I'm just making use of 5 inches after my waistline. So you can also measure yourself and determine where you want yours to be. So I'll just go ahead and connect. So this is what I have. Next we'll be altering the neckline of this pattern. So I'll go ahead and mark a basic neckline of 3 inches, and I will mark that 3 inches upward. So remember what we have there is about 2.5 inches. That 2.5 inches is not a standard. So I'll go ahead, place my curve through, and I'll connect. The 2.5 inches is for the built-up collar. It totally depends on the height of the collar you want to make. So I'll come in by 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead to place my tape, and I'll measure the 1.5 inches, and from that point I'm going to connect. So this is what I have. This totally depends on the design you have on your collar. So after connecting, I'll mark 2 inches on this point, and I'll go ahead to connect this all the way down. And I'll go ahead to reconnect the rest of the pattern. So after cutting out, this is what I have. So I'm going to place my tape, leaving about 1 inches after my under bust, like the upper part, and I'll go ahead to connect the neckline. So because of this dart, I'll just trace out a little so that when I join back my pattern, that ½ inch I added will make up for the dart I have at the center, that is at the nipple to nipple part. So I'll use my correction pen to take out the double lines there. So I'll go ahead to cut this out, but before that I'll go ahead to mark about 2 inches from my waistline. And after connecting, I wasn't okay with that. I just went in about 0.25 and I went ahead to connect it down. So I'll just go ahead and cut out this pattern. So after cutting it out, we'll be tracing out the neckline and the yoke part of this blouse. So at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and join us in our next video. And also leave your comment at the comment section. So after I was done cutting out, I added another pattern paper. So with this, we are going to trace out the neckline we have. So we are going to be tracing out the neckline of this pattern, and we are going to cut another one for it. So you'll be sewing this dress like a total bustier. Then after that, you sew your yoke and you place and top stitch it before you go ahead to attach your sleeve to the dress. I'll also go ahead to trace this part, and I'll follow the curve I have there, and I will draw it out, and after that I'll just go ahead to cut it out. So now I'll be cutting out this bustier part. So before I cut out, I'll place my new pattern on top, and I will be tracing out that part that I have my bustier line. Then I'll just go ahead and cut this. So if I replace this with this, you see or notice that it is matching up with what I have. So I'll just go ahead and cut out the rest of my pattern. So you're going to be sewing this dress as a separate bustier dress, and then you're going to make the yoke and place and top stitch it right on that part. So I'll just go ahead and I will cut out the rest of my pattern, and after I'm done cutting, this is what I have. So after this, you want to go ahead to measure the neckline or the shoulder part. So I have 7 inches. That shoulder will also match the shoulder you have for the back pattern. So for the back pattern, I've marked out all my basic measurements just like we did for the front. The only difference is that I have a zipper. So I'll place my tape and I'll go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, starting from my zipper line, and I'm going to place my ruler and I'll connect and draw a straight line. After that, I'll be marking ½ inch on both sides of my waistline for my dart intake. We're just using a basic dart intake for this pattern. Now I'm going to go ahead to draw out my dart. I'll extend this up and also extend it down to the lower part of the pattern this way. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to mark out my dart. Next step is to insert your body measurement. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance, mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. At the lower part, I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance. So you can use 1.5 inches, 2 inches or 2.5, or any desired sewing allowance of your choice for this pattern. So after I'm done marking that, I'll just use my marker to outline. So I'll go ahead and mark ½ inch at this part, extend it down and take it up. This is to get rid of the bulginess or zipper bulge at the back of the dress. So now I'll just go ahead and mark, and I will connect this to the upper part of this pattern, and I will lapel this as my zip. So next we'll be moving over to the upper part. So remember, before drafting out my pattern, we added 2.5 inches up. So I marked my basic neckline of 3 inches just like we did for the front. front, place my curve drew, and I went ahead to connect. Now I'll go ahead to draw out my shoulder this way. I'll go ahead to measure my neckline to make sure it's that same 7 inches. After that, I came down by ½ inch at the zipper side and I connected. So this is what I have for just the back, and for the lower part of this pattern, I'm going to go ahead and still come down from my waistline just like we did at the front pattern, and I'm not going to give a really deep curve, just a slight one. So this is what my back pattern looks like, and I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. So if you find this tutorial very educative and interesting, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and also join us in our next video. Thanks.